Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, May the 15th, 2022. It is currently 2:45 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Abilene, Texas. All right, now I need you to set aside all distractions, all right? Whatever could be causing you some distractions, either walk away from it or tell it to walk away from you. If you're driving your car, just pay close attention to the road. Okay. No, I need you to pay close attention to what I'm going to say, because I'm going to ask you a question. And from this question, then I'm going to ask for your help. All right. So first, I'm going to ask you a question. Then I'm going to ask for your help. So I need you to pay close attention. If you have a piece of paper and something to write with, this would be a great time to get it out and have it ready to go, because you're going to have to write something down. And I'm going to need your help with what you write down. I'm going to give you something to write down, and I'm going to need your help with it. But let's start with the first question, all right? So first a question, then I'm going to ask you for help. So I guess I could say this. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to ask you if you will help me in trying to find an answer to this question. Well, kind of that way. It will all make sense. I'm delaying right now on purpose, right? I know you're saying, just get to it. I'm waiting. I'm making sure everyone has the opportunity to move away any distractions. I was just going to start, not even with my typical intro. I was just going to start and say, have you ever heard of the following person? And then give you the name. I was just going to start right with that, but I'm thinking, you know what? A lot of people, when they hit play, they may be doing something else, and they may be completely distracted and not even hear the name that I mentioned. So I want to make sure everyone hears what I'm about to say. Have you ever heard of the following individual? Yuval-noah-harrari. 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 Yuval is spelled Y-U-V-A-L. Yuval-Noah, N-O-A-H. Harari, H-A-R-A-R-I. Yuval-noah-harrari. Have you ever heard of that individual? Yuval-noah-harrari, or Yuval-noah-harrari, depending on, I've heard it, I think, a couple of different ways. There's probably only one accurate way, but depending on what program I'm listening to, I've heard the name mentioned a lot. Yuval-noah-harrari, I have heard this name mentioned on countless podcasts, and I heard it again late last night. All right. So I'm going to tell you in a minute how I heard it, but here's what I need you to do. Yuval-noah-harrari, I'm going to ask your help in doing some research on Yuval-noah-harrari and seeing what we can find out, because I'm starting to hear this name pop up in podcast after podcast after podcast after podcast, with all kinds of claims being made by Yuval-noah-harrari. For example, well, wouldn't last night. I guess it was early this morning. It was somewhere between, I think, midnight and 1 a.m. I'm sitting there listening to podcasts, one podcast after another podcast after another podcast. And all of a sudden, I was listening to this podcast, and they mention Yuval-noah-harrari. And they basically tell me that Yuval-noah-harrari is wicked, dangerous, evil, possibly demon-possessed, and that basically that as Christians, we should pay close attention to what Yuval-noah-harrari is saying and what he is doing. And I'm like, whoa, wow, okay. So demon-possessed, evil, dangerous, that's a lot of accusations against another human being. Now, we'll talk about what I heard here in a minute, but I was like, wow. So immediately I was like, you know what? I've heard this name a couple of times now. And I think in every time he's almost spoken of as some sinister person involved in some very questionable activities with some very troubling ideologies and some very some very disturbing beliefs is the way it's usually put forth, is that Yuval-Noah-Harari is someone that could be detrimental to the future of everything. I mean, literally, I have heard some extreme statements being made in regards to this individual. Now, on 99% of the podcasts that I've heard the name mentioned, I don't think any of them have been Christian. They've been more your secular podcasts, many of them conspiratorial. So, I'm kind of just like, all right, yeah, Yuval-Noah-Harari. Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, yeah. So he's the villain of the day on all of these kinds of more secular, conspiratorial podcasts. All right, no big deal. But last night, it wasn't a secular podcast. It was a Christian podcast. A Christian podcast that deals with biblical prophecy and the end times. Not only that, the episode which I was listening to, this is very important, they were doing an interview with someone by the name of J.B. Hickson. J.B. Hickson, Hixson, all right? And they were interviewing him as he discussed his book, The Spirit of the Antichrist. Whoa. Okay. So in a Christian program where they're interviewing J.B. Hickson as he discusses his book, The Spirit of the Antichrist, and the whole title of the book is The Spirit of the Antichrist, The Gathering Cloud of Deception. All right. So I'm listening to a Christian program. They're interviewing a pastor who wrote a book called The Spirit of the Antichrist, The Gathering Cloud of Deception. And in this interview, everything turns and they begin to discuss they don't spend a lot of time, but they spend some time mentioning Yuval-Noah-Harari. Now you can already see, wait a minute, a program about the spirit of Antichrist, a program about a book that also describes the gathering cloud of deception, and then they mention someone by the name of Yuval-Noah-Harari. You can see why I'm like, wait a minute, are they claiming that Yuval-Noah-Harari has the spirit of Antichrist? Is the Antichrist? What is going on here? So I listen to everything, but I'm skeptical about everything. So here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to do as much research on Yuval-Noah-Harari as you can. I want you to find what people are saying, people who are warning again about this individual, people who are defending the individual. And most importantly, it seems that a lot of people are taking audio from different interviews that he has done, but they are not giving us the source of said interviews, which makes it very impossible to verify what they're playing. I'm not saying that what they're playing is not like it's actually Yuval-Noah-Harari speaking. I'm calling into question the context because they're only playing clips without giving me the actual, here's the speech where I could go listen to that quote within a broader context. I'm not trying to say someone is making something up. I'm just saying that I am always skeptical, especially when you're making massive claims like this person is dangerous, this person is demon possessed, this person somehow is connected to the spirit of Antichrist. I mean, those are absolutely outlandish claims. So is there any truth to them? So I would just ask you to do your own research. What can we find out about this individual? And what do you think? Not based on what you've heard people say about the individual, but based on in-depth research. Is this someone that is like, this person is, I don't even know how to classify it. I mean, the way people are talking about him is that it's like, whoa. I mean, it's so over the top in many ways, right? And we always know that on many conspiratorial podcasts and conspiratorial webcasts, and blogs and all those types of things, they constantly have to have someone who's the villain, right? Bill Gates, the villain, right? There's always someone like that's the villain. And it seems in some ways that Yuval-Noah-Harari is kind of now rising to this, like he's the villain on not only Christian podcasts, but secular conspiratorial ones. Now, sometimes the secular conspiratorial world and the Christian world, religious world, sometimes they merge together in a lot of strange ways. Is this one of those situations? Who is Yuval-Noah-Harari? Well, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to play a portion of what I heard last night. Now, what I wanted to do was just fast forward it until right when they mention Yuval-Noah-Harari. Like right when they mention him, then they're going to play these, well, basically a video of a bunch of different quotes by Yuval-Noah-Harari. And I was just going to play that. But then I thought, well, that removes it from any context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the beginning of this podcast that I was listening to last night. From the beginning, now I'll be interrupting at different times, all the way until they finish their discussion about Yuval-Noah-Harari. Because then we'll be able to place this in context, and you can see, based off context, what are they insinuating? What are they doing? And do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you know? What do you not know? I mean, this is just an interesting. I don't know what to make of it. I guess I will say that it's interesting, but I don't know what to make of it. So I'm imploring all of you who listen to this program, because sometimes you're the best research staff I have, because I don't have any other research staff. What can we find? All right. And if you find something that mentions something about Yuval-Noah-Harari, just verify that there's documentation and we can verify facts. It's just strange. I do know that Yuval-Noah-Harari was born February the 24th, 1976 in Israel. I do know that. He seemed to be very, 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 very smart. Started studying, I think, at the age of 17. Let me see. I believe at the age of 17, he started, let me see here. He began studying history and international relations at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem at age 17. So he was in university at the age of 17. It seemed like in his earlier academic career, he was always in classes for advanced students who are highly gifted or very intellectual or have great intellectual ability. So he seems to be extremely smart, born in Israel, and he's becoming, I guess, the topic or a focus. Let me say this. I don't want to go that far. He's being mentioned more and more frequently on different podcasts, and I find it interesting that there may be there's something kind of building here. Now, it may be building because everyone is just losing their minds and misrepresenting and are saying false things about this individual, or this individual has said and did some things that's very troubling to many, and for some weird reason, everyone's seeming to be talking about it in a relatively close proximity to one another. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to listen to a little bit of the Christian podcast that I heard, again, I keep saying last night, early this morning, where they talk about Yuval-Noah-Harari. But before they do that, well, you're going to get the name of the podcast. Now, I know there's one listener that anytime I play audio from this podcast, they're like, that's it. I just can't listen to you anymore because you play audio from that podcast. I'm not playing this because I agree with it's just weird. Some people have this mentality that they're only going to listen to everything they agree with. And my mentality is I listen to things I agree with and disagree with because that's how I am challenged. And that's how I hear lots of different content so that I have things to think and to study and to look into. If all I ever try to listen to is what I agree with, then this is basically how it works. I have decided what is truth, and I'm only going to listen to people who agree with what I think. Well, then you'll always think you're right. So it's just really weird when I'll get emails like, you shouldn't listen to that. Well, thank you for telling me what I should or shouldn't listen to. I'm so glad I wouldn't be able to function without you telling me what I can and cannot do. How about this? I'll listen to whatever I want. How about that? Okay. And that doesn't mean I agree with everything. I read books. I know this is shocking. I read books I don't agree with. I listen to podcasts I don't agree with. I listen to preachers I don't agree with. I've gone to Bible colleges and seminary and theological institutes that I didn't always agree with because I'm always wanting to be challenged. It's just some people have a very weird perspective on that. It's like, nope, here's the people I agree with and everyone else is banished and I'm just going to live inside this bubble. And therefore, I'm always right. I know. Isn't it great if I could just live in a bubble where everyone says what I already agree with? What a great way to live. Okay. I know I like to be challenged. So here we go. I don't always agree with everything on this podcast. In fact, I disagree with much, but I do find it interesting because they talk about a lot of things related to biblical prophecy, to the Bible, to what's going on in the world of Christianity, and to their, and they have a lot to say about, obviously, their perspective on biblical prophecy. And in this particular case, well, they end up mentioning Yuval-noah-harrari. Let's see what we can find out. Here we go.
Today we talk about the gathering cloud of deception.
Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition?
Welcome to Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell, Radio for the Remnant, brought to you by Olive Tree Ministries. We welcome Pastor J.B. Hickson this week, author of the new book, Spirit of the Antichrist, The Gathering Cloud of Deception. As the world spins in turmoil, Jan and her guest analyze just who the major players are and their tactics. And they tell you what you can do to push back this darkness. Here is today's programming.
Okay, so let's stop right here. First of all, the name of the program is Understanding the Times with Jan Markell. Her last name is spelled Markell. Understanding the Times, Jan Markell. You can probably find it on any podcast app that you utilize. If you cannot find it, let me know, and I'll find a way to help you find it on your podcast app, because I probably already have that podcast app on my iPad, since I use pretty much all of them. All right. So Understanding the Times. Typically, new episodes, I think they drop at either like Thursday night going into midnight Friday, or it happens somewhere like Friday night going into midnight Saturday. It's always late night when I get the notification that a new episode has dropped. And typically I try to listen as soon as I get the notification. Now, a lot of times I don't make it all the way through it. I'll listen 10, 15 minutes, try to get a basic idea of what that episode's about. If I think it's something fascinating, I may keep listening, or I may move on to something else, because I subscribe to thousands and thousands of podcasts. So I have to kind of pick and choose. But I always keep up with what's going on. So it's called Understanding the Times. We've talked about it before. The episode is dated May the 13th. It's the title of this episode is The Cosmic Battle and the Gathering Cloud of Deception. Now, to be honest with you, that is a pretty cool title, which is going to get lots of people's attention. The Cosmic Battle and the Gathering Cloud of Deception. Now, when I saw the title, The Gathering Cloud of Deception, I thought, I wonder if it's going to talk about maybe deception coming into the church. I didn't know which direction they were going to go. Here's their description of the episode we're listening to part of. Jan spends the hour with Pastor J.B. Hickson, and Hickson is Hixson, discussing his book, The Spirit of the Antichrist, The Gathering Cloud of Deception. The unbelieving world is marching behind a dark ruler as we watch the setup for the tribulation. According to Psalm 2, God laughs at these players on the end-time chessboard. Find Hickson's book in our online store. All right, now, I'll tell you a little bit about the book so that you get the idea. Now, I do find it funny because I've been listening to biblical prophecy programs since the late 1980s. During the 1990s, it was common, I hate to say it, it was more for entertainment purposes than it was for edification or for taking anything serious. I used to listen to a program called The Prophecy Club. And every day, Monday through Friday, the Prophecy Club was on. Basically, the tribulation is about to happen, and they're going to give us microchips, and this is going to happen, and it's and it was just on and on and on and on. And of course, we made it all through the 1990s, and well, here we are. Then the 2000, leading up to 2000, it was all going to happen. It was just over and over and over and over. I've heard so many times that the tribulation is about to start, and this country is about to attack this country, and war is going to break out, and and we're going to get microchipped, and we're going to end up in FEMA camps, and I cannot tell you. And they're going to take away all of our guns, and they're going to shut down our churches. It's been, if I had a dime for every time I've heard these, like, it's here, predictions, I would be so rich that, I could probably do whatever I wanted, anywhere I wanted in the world. I could probably own part of the world, but I know that's a little bit of exaggeration. But I do find it funny that every time I tune into another, Christian prophecy program, it's always like, this is it. It's going to happen anytime now. It's here. And then you're like, 15 years later, you're like, I remember when it was here. And I'm not mocking it. It just means sometimes as Christians, we got to think about what we're saying, because at some point you can't just keep I guess if all you're trying to do is sell fear, panic, and paranoia, it works because there's always an audience ready to buy into it and eat it up. But sooner or later, some of your audience is going to call into question your constant making it seem like we're that close. But here, the tribulation is being set up right now. The time of the tribulation is being set up right now. Now, the book, this is what the book goes into. Again, the book is called The Gathering Cloud of Deception, the Spirit of the Antichrist, The Gathering Cloud of Deception. All right. And this is volume 1. According to this is volume 1. So I don't know how many volumes there's going to be. But this is what it says. Dr. Hickson unmasked the Luciferian Conspiracy and the coming New World Order. Learn how the stage is being set up for the satanic one world system. They have entered their end game, which means the rapture is closer than ever. This book will enlighten you and hopefully cause you to join the battle for truth in these days when the spirit of Antichrist is so prevalent. Now, I'm giving you all of this context because it's within this context that they're going to, in a sense, introduce us to Yuval-noah-harrari. So you can kind of tell where they believe this person fits in. He fits in a part of the Luciferian Luciferian Conspiracy, the New World Order, a time of great satanic deception, the spirit of Antichrist. That's where they believe Yuval-noah-harrari fits in. So that's why I'm wanting us to do research to just see how accurate is any of this, or just like what is happening? Why is this person becoming the center of lots of discussion in these kinds of circles? Let's see what else they have to say. I know we haven't made it very far, but I'm just wanting you to understand the whole broader context. So if you want to check any of this out and listen to it for yourself, because we're not going to be able to review all of this. We're just going to get up to the part where they talk about Yuval-noah-harrari. So if you want to listen to the rest, you'll need to go find it. All right, here we go.
The premise of this series, just to review for those of you that weren't here in the first hour, comes from the book of 1 John, which tells us that the spirit of the Antichrist, capital A, the future world tyrant under the power of Satan, will be ruling the world and persecuting Christians like never before, and Jews, is already in the world. In other words, that spirit of all that the Antichrist stands for is already at work. In fact, in chapter 2, John tells us that many Antichrists, little a, have already come, even though the ultimate Antichrist is coming someday. Well, what does he mean by that? He means that Satan is hard at work deceiving the world, preparing the way for his ultimate takeover. He knows the story. He knows that it's going to culminate in this final battle of Armageddon and that Christ is going to ultimately take the throne according to the biblical narrative. He just doesn't believe it. He himself is deceived. He is a deceiver and he's deceived, self-deceived. So he doesn't believe the truth of God's word. There's no truth in him. What that means is that for the last 2,000 years, since Christ defeated the darkness, defeated death, hell, and the grave by rising from the dead the third day, Satan has been in a panic mode, doing everything he can to prepare for this final battle. And he doesn't know God's timetable, so he doesn't know when this final end times phase is going to kick in. So in every generation for the last 2,000 years, he has to have his man of the hour, his Antichrist candidate ready to step into that role. If the rapture were to happen, he's got to have his man marked out. And I believe he knows who that man is going to be right now. And yes, it will be a man, according to the Scripture. And if the rapture were to happen today, then he's ready to influence that man, indwell that man, and begin the process of this final tyrannical 7-year period.
Okay, now that's an interesting setup, right? They're getting ready to come in to start their interview. That's kind of their tease. That's the audio clip that's supposed to kind of, bring you in, because this raises lots of issues. Okay, so Satan in every generation has basically had his Antichrist ready. Since Satan doesn't know when the end game, when the final stage is going to kick off, in every generation, he's like, okay, here, I've got my Antichrist ready. Okay. So if the final stage begins, my Antichrist is ready. Now that's the context. Now, if that's the context where they're going to at some point introduce us to Yuval-noah-harrari, could it possibly be insinuated that, hey, watch this guy, because this could be the Antichrist for this generation if the final stage begins? Is this now the individual that, like, for this generation moving forward, we keep our eye on him, because if the final stage starts, that's going to be the guy? Is that insinuated here? Because it's just interesting that this is the way this starts, right? So, all right, let's see where they go, because we want to get to where they talk about Yuval-noah-harrari. Here we go.
Welcome to Understanding the Times Radio. That was a short clip by my guest for the hour, who I'll bring on just as soon as I set the stage for today's programming. And I'm continuing on, as you know, for the last couple of months. We've looked heavily at one-worldism, globalism, talking about the movers and shakers in the world of the coming kingdom of the Antichrist foretold in the Bible. Revelation 13 talks about a future one-world money system, religious system, governmental system, and a single ruler with several cohorts. Who are they? An Antichrist, a false prophet, and their minions marching to the beat of their dark ruler, the devil. The Bible says in 1 John 4 that greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world, or this fallen angel world ruler. Lucifer and his angels know their time is short, and I believe they are presently causing as much havoc in the world as possible, and as much difficulty in your life as possible. Now, the Holy Spirit is far stronger than Satan and any of his minions, and the Spirit's wisdom is greater than any of Satan's schemes. The Spirit's protection is more than enough to thwart any of Satan's attacks. That is the bottom line. And as we go through the discussion today and talk about some things that are heavy, please remember that the Holy Spirit is far stronger than Satan or any of his minions. And because he who is in us is greater than he who is in the world, we have confidence in God and at the same time put no confidence in the flesh. The power is not ours, but it is the Lord's. So we can't at the same time dismiss the spirit of the Antichrist, so prevalent today. So when I was sent a fairly new book by author and pastor J.B. Hickson, I was intrigued enough that I invited the pastor and author on air today to talk about the publication. It's titled The Spirit of the Antichrist, The Gathering Cloud of Deception, and we carry it in our online store. I'm just going to read one paragraph from an early chapter, and the title is The Cosmic Battle. The author says there is much going on in the world. If you look at the headlines and see all that is happening, you will recognize that there must be something major at play, something beyond this world. When you look at Scripture, your suspicions are confirmed. According to the Bible, life is about more than what you can see, hear, or touch. There is a cosmic battle going on between good and evil. And it has been that way since Satan fell from heaven. He fell like lightning because of his pride. He thought he could take over God's realm and be God himself. Instead, he was cast to the earth and has been trying to conquer that ever since. So what is this gathering cloud of deception? Talk about it now with Pastor J.B. Hickson. He's an author, commentator, conference speaker. He leads Plum Creek Chapel in Sedalia, Colorado. He's founder of Not by Works Ministry, and you can learn more at notbyworks.org. Pastor Hickson, welcome to Understanding the Times for the first time.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, now before we get to the interview, Not by Works, I think she said .org. I did look up that ministry. He has his own podcast. I subscribe to that. So when I started listening to this again early this morning, I keep saying late last night, but early this morning, midnight, 1 a.m., whatever it was, I immediately grabbed my iPad and started searching and found Not by Works and found that podcast and subscribed to that as well. Again, he has written this book about the spirit of Antichrist, this cosmic battle, this coming cloud of deception. And, they're getting ready to get into a discussion about all of this, but just watch carefully. Again, for context sake, what we're waiting for is how this transitions from all of these things that they're talking about, Antichrist, false prophets, false teaching, all of these things, and how that flows into a segment where they're going to talk about this individual by the name of Yuval-noah-Harari. I want you to hear what they have to say about this individual. But remember, the goal here is to introduce you to this individual so that we can do our own research to see if this is an accurate representation of this man, a misrepresentation of this man, and we'll draw some conclusions from everything. All right. So that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for this transition. So pay close attention and see, because based off the context, I think we're going to be able to get an idea of what they're kind of implying here. Here we go.
So great to be with you.
I have read, I would say 95% of your book. It's outstanding. The Gathering Cloud of Deception, that's actually your subtitle. As I'm reading through the book, you and I are accused sometimes of propagating conspiracy theories, and yet in an opening chapter of your book, it's titled The Luciferian Conspiracy. Why don't you explain exactly what does it look like? How do my listeners identify it?
So the simplest way to say it is the Luciferian Conspiracy is a conspiracy involving Satan, demons, and human agents working together to defeat God and ultimately take over the world. In the section that you read, I talk about how Satan was kicked out of heaven because he couldn't have the throne. And since he couldn't have heaven, he's got his sights set on the earth. And he's been trying ever since then, for 6,000 years now, to take over this earth and make it his own. In order to do that, he's got some co-conspirators. These include his demons, which are 1/3 of the angels that fell with him, and of course, human beings that are Luciferians. That's their term for themselves. They believe.
Okay, so their major thesis here is there's this thing called the Luciferian Conspiracy, which is made up of Satan, demons, and human agents conspiring together to basically take over the world. And that Luciferians, these are people, in many cases, who identify themselves as Luciferians. Obviously, there's a lot of, you can say this is a lot of crazy stuff. Whatever your view is here, again, I just want you to see the context where they're going. I'm not here to try to take all of that apart. I want you to hear the context, because they're going to come in and mention Yuval-noah-Harari. They're going to mention this actual, individual. Are they referring to this individual as being a part of the Luciferian conspiracy? That he's a Luciferian. Is that where this is going? Right? I mean, again, they're making a major claim about a human being here. That's what I want you thinking about today, and I need your help to do some research on. But they're going to give us a lot of information about this individual here in just a minute. They're going to transition here in a second, and that's what I want you to hear the context to.
That Lucifer is the hero. Back in the Genesis account, they believe that God is the antagonist and Lucifer is the protagonist. So they worship him, they take their marching orders from him, and they dedicate their books to him. So that's the conspiracy in a nutshell. It's Satan, demons, and human beings trying to work together to overthrow God and claim this world as their own.
As you kind of highlight, Ephesians 6 says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, so the battle really isn't between Democrats and Republicans or socialists and communists. It's between the principalities and powers in the heaven.
Absolutely. The verse that you quoted at the outset of the show from 1 John 4:4, greater is he who is in us than he who is in the world. The verse right before that very plainly states that even though one Antichrist, capital A, is coming, who will take the helm of the one world system for 7 years prior to the return of Christ, who will then establish the kingdom in perfect peace and righteousness, even though that one Antichrist is coming, even now, the spirit of the Antichrist is already at work among us. So it definitely is a spiritual battle. It's a cosmic struggle, as we talk about, and it's getting worse and worse. The subtitle of the book, The Gathering Cloud of Deception.
Yes, and I'm going there. Tell me what that means.
2 Timothy 3:13, which is the last letter Paul wrote before he was martyred, written about 67 AD, and he says this, "Evil men and impostors will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived." In other words, in 67 AD, early on in the church age, just 3 decades in, things were already getting worse and worse. So just imagine how bad they are 2,000 years later. People forget that depravity is a degenerative disease. It does not get better with time. It does not self-correct. Things are getting worse and worse. Of course, it doesn't mean that from a Christian perspective that, of course, we see pockets of revival. The Spirit of God is alive and well. He's calling people to faith. We're seeing God doing some amazing things. But in the grand scheme of things, we will not see a return to the pre-fall Edenic state until after Christ himself comes back with a rod of iron and rules in perfect peace and justice and righteousness.
You recommend studying the spirit of the Antichrist so we can recognize how Satan's plan is unfolding. Now, let me just say this. Most people today are so discouraged about the headlines, news stories, the sad drama they have to watch every day, not to mention the drama in their own lives, be it wrecked marriages or children out of order, etc. But you suggest that watching all the activity in the world that is satanically induced, not all of it, but an awful lot of it, is necessary. By the way, I agree with you, but why are you promoting this?
First of all, preparedness is a biblical concept. Proverbs 22:3 says, "He who sees trouble coming and prepares for it is wise." A lot of times people make this false dichotomy between trusting the Lord and doing the natural things that we should do to be prepared. But the Bible doesn't make that dichotomy. The Bible teaches both. Of course, our ultimate trust and faith is in the Lord, but he gives us common sense and he gives us a brain to use. And God wants us to stick around for a while. He doesn't want us to just throw up our hands, wave the white flag of surrender, and jump on the train. He wants us to be here so we can share Christ and raise our children and grandchildren. So the biblical principle is when you see the train coming, you need to take precautions. We're never to be scared, but
Yes.
we are to be prepared.
All of this is outlined in the Bible and various places, heavily Revelation 13, but other places as well. There we read about this coming global government. I've been on that topic for the last year very, very heavily, and partly because of the forming Great Reset, and my audience knows pretty well what the Great Reset is. And you know, J.B. Hickson, what I do remind people is there are two things standing in the way of the one world agenda. The two things are America and Christianity. And has there ever been a greater attack on America and Christianity than in, say, the last 10 years for sure? Sir.
There's that mixing a very pro-American idea to Christianity. Like the thing holding back this is America and Christianity. So we've got to defend Christianity and we've got to defend America. So this is where the patriotism becomes blurring the lines in with theology and Christianity, which you can almost sometimes, I'm not saying this is where they're going with it, but Christian nationalism can arise from this idea. But it's like we need America and we need Christianity. We need both if the world is going to it's just kind of interesting how that happens. But again, I'm not here to take all this apart. I'm here for you to see the context before they introduce us to this individual by whose name is Yuval-noah-Harrari. That is what we're waiting for. I know I could have just jumped right to the appropriate clip where they mention him, but you wouldn't have this context. I want you to hear the context because the context is giving you an idea that clearly they believe this individual, I think, is a part of the Luciferian Conspiracy and that he's conspiring with basically Satan and demons to try to take over the world. That's kind of where I think they're going with this. You can tell me if you agree. Here we go.
Certainly the last 100 years.
In their own writings, they make it clear that they want to destroy America. One of the credos of the Luciferians is order out of chaos. Mm-hmm. They want to destroy so that they can rebuild, or as Klaus Schwab says, build back better. That's been their plan for a long time. Of course, the Luciferians, and of course Satan himself, they're not omniscient, they're not omnipotent, they're not omnipresent, so they can't just wave a magic wand and make it happen. Obviously, there's internal struggles and internal fighting, and sometimes they fail at some of their attempts. So we can go back to the League of Nations in the early 20th century, or, of course, the United Nations after World War II. There have been setbacks, but we know what their agenda is because it's written in plain sight, and they are targeting the mid-2020s as an end game. Now, it doesn't mean they'll succeed because, of course, God's sovereign, and God's timetable is the only one that ultimately matters, and he may decide he wants to wait another 100 years. I don't think so,
I just find it funny because I've just heard they're targeting for the mid 2020s. I remember when they were targeting for the early 1990s, and then I remember when they were targeting to the mid 1990s, and then I remember when they were targeting at 2000. I've heard these programs so many times that if I wrote down every time where they're like, okay, we better get ready. This is going to be it. Now they always throw in that, well, I mean, it could be another 100 years. They always throw in like, don't hold me to this, but this is what I'm thinking. And because if it's not right, well, see, I told you not to hold me to it, but wait till next year. I'll have another book. I'll have another DVD series. I'll have another podcast. So that I'm warning you about now, it's going to be 2030. It's going to be the middle of the 2030s. It's just, it never ends. So I sometimes I have to laugh because I've heard this stuff so much, but we still want to know, what has this got to do with Yuval-Noah-Harrari? Okay, that's what we're trying to get to. I know this is taking a long time, but that's okay. Stay with me.
I see the setting of the stage. It just seems like it can't be much longer, but we always want to give that caveat that what their plan is at the end of the day must come under God's sovereignty. So the way I like to say it is that the Luciferian plot is never any match for the Lord's plan.
If you join me late, you are listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have on the line Pastor J.B. Hickson because we are carrying his new book, Spirit of the Antichrist, The Gathering Cloud of Deception. Find that in my online store, olivetreeviews.org, views as in viewpoint, olivetreeviews.org. Give my office a call. Get on our newsletter lists. We charge no shipping, folks, in the U.S. and Canada. JB, I want to introduce a character. He's no stranger to you. And let me precede the clip here by saying this, that back on April 21st, we had, I believe it was our 5th Understanding the Times mini-conference here in the suburbs of Minneapolis-St. Paul. We invited Pastor Brandon Holthouse to come and talk about the rising New World Order, and we introduced to the audience a gentleman by the name of Yuval-Noah-Harrari, who is, if I could sum it up in 2 words, a God-hater. He's also one of the most influential men in the world because he's got the ear of Klaus Schwab, head of World Economic Forum. And I want to play a clip. It's a little longer than usual, but you need to get to know Yuval-Harari.
Okay, now we're going to stop right here. Okay, so they're going to introduce them. Now, introduce this character. They define him as a God-hater and one of the most influential men in the world. That's a lot. The most influential man in the world is a God-hater. And they talked about this at one of their prophecy conferences. And now they're talking about it here regarding a Luciferian conspiracy and a coming cloud of deception and the spirit of Antichrist. Clearly, they're connecting this individual with end-time biblical prophecy, or why else would you be even mentioning this individual? Or at the very least, they're connecting this man with a Luciferian conspiracy, or at least the very least with the spirit of Antichrist. He's very much obviously connected to all of this in their minds. I'm going to back that up just a little because I want it to be able to flow into this video clip that they're playing. Because at one of their conferences, they introduced everyone to this character or this person, Yuval-Noah-Harrari. All right, that's the situation. That's the context. I want you to listen to the clips they're going to play because the clips they're going to play are from statements from Yuval-Noah-Harrari. Again, there's no context to the statements, but you listen and tell me what you think. Here we go.
It's a little longer than usual, but you need to get to know Yuval-Harrari.
Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, he's got a right-hand man who has worked hand-in-hand with him through these recent years. He's talked about not only the global world economy, but obviously digital, all these things we're talking about. But what I want you to catch in this next video clip, and I want you two to comment, is how invasive it is. I mean, think about, we're going to have this digital Bill of Rights. Whatever happened to for the people, by the people, of the people? I mean, that's totally out. But listen to this carefully and kind of catch what the intent is and how intrusive it is. Let's listen to this.
And COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, We need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin. What we have seen so far is corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. We now see mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition? Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life. Humans are now hackable animals. The whole idea that humans have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me, so whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. I mean, all this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
So people are hackable now.
And you can hear the reaction from the crowd. The crowd's like, oh. Now, please note a couple of things. Those were brief clips. Look, that was them jumping to different clips, that little sound. They were going from clip to clip to clip. We have no idea where the clips came from. We have no context. Now, some of the things said there, you're kind of like, whoa, what is going on there? Okay. I mean, there's definitely some troubling things being said. I mean, basically, we're becoming gods. We're hackable. The government wants to monitor not just where we go and what we do, but what's going on inside of us. Okay. Clearly a rejection of Jesus rising from the dead and all of that. That's fake news. Yeah. So clearly Yuval-noah-harrari is obviously not a believer. Obviously, I can't say I can clearly define his ideology just from that. But it's clearly something that, well, we need to find out what's going on since more and more people keep mentioning this individual. Listen to what they say here.
Tell us what that means. Tell us what the
I think we need to explain who this Mr. Yuval-Harari is. He's an Israeli. He's a homosexual. And he's the person that Klaus Schwab listens to more than anybody. He may be the most dangerous man on the planet. And you've just heard him for a couple of minutes here. When he speaks, world leaders listen, including to the nonsense he just spoke there.
You think if you ever want to see what evil looks like, it's that dude. Okay? If you listen to this guy speak, man, this guy is full out evil, the things he's thinking about. But what he's really trying to do, they want to hack your brain so that they can tell you what to think and how to think. And that last little clip that said that Jesus rose from the dead was fake news. He is such a God hater.
Yes,
he believes that any faith in God, the God above the clouds he calls him, that any faith is just fictitious and fake news. So he wants to be able to hack the brain to eliminate people believing like that. He believes that's a false narrative. And so they have their narrative, and so with this digital currency, with this ability to hack people and put things under your skin and perhaps in your brain, they want to be able to control the thoughts of people. This is why it's so dangerous. And Elon Musk has talked about it, and a few other people about putting chips in your brain and things like that. That's where they're going, guys. I hope we're raptured before that. But for goodness sakes, that's pretty evil. It's basically they want to destroy belief.
That's right.
Belief in the one true God. Now that's when you know, I would say that guy's probably satanically, demonically possessed to say things like that. That is Antichrist language, where you blaspheme the God of heaven.
Keep your eye on this man wherever you can hear him. Listen to him.
Yeah,
and
bad dude.
Ponder what he's saying. It's very dark. It's very dark.
Recently in an interview he was talking about hacking us. And he said, we're going to have these implants so that you don't believe fake news. And he went on, he says, all of us have this propensity to different things, to think about politics this way or ethics this way. But we're going to make sure that when we do this, we'll be able to keep people from these things, anything that's fake news. So that resurrection statement, that's why we included that in the video clip, because he specifically says the resurrection of Jesus. We're going to keep people from believing the resurrection or anything about biblical morality.
That was.
Now, those are some absolutely crazy claims. Now, just because someone has a crazy philosophy or a crazy claim doesn't mean that tomorrow it's going to become a reality. But it is a fascinating concept that someone, now if, and I stress if, because they didn't give us any tangible proof. It's just lots of accusations. That's why I'm asking you to help me out. Yuval-noah-harrari, I need you to find out everything we can about this individual that's accurate. So, like his statements in a full context of him talking would be the approach where we can hear his own words. But I want to hear his own words where he basically says, look, we want to make people hackable so that we can hack into their brains so they cannot believe fake news. And fake news is, well, Jesus raising from the dead. If there is a move out there to hack people's brains to keep them from believing whatever is deemed fake news, that's a pretty, that's something to pay attention to. And that's something that you're like, wait, where are we going with this? What is that going to look like 20 years from now? I'm not saying it's true. Please hear me out. I'm not saying this is true because I'm skeptical about, they make all of these claims. Well, if all of that's true, why wouldn't they just spend 45 minutes, an hour in that conference playing the entire clip? Like, hey, he said this. Well, then play the clip. He said he wants to hack people's brains so they can't believe in fake news, and he believes Jesus raising from the dead is fake news. Therefore, he wants to hack your brain so that you won't believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Okay. Put that all, if you've got audio clips of that would then play, don't just play 10 seconds, play 30 minutes of it and walk through it. That would be worth the price to get into your conference if they charge money. I don't know. I'm just saying typically in the conferences they do. But whether it's free or the people pay to get in, that would be worth the attendance of your conference. So we're going to try to do that. Where does Yuval-noah-harrari says people are hackable? Here's how we want to hack them, and here's what we want to do with the hack. We want to keep them from buying into fake news. That's what we want to find. Is there any truth to this, or is this completely made up? Now, what I found interesting is they called him evil, a bad dude, demon possessed. They just went all kinds of accusations. I never heard once even a call to pray for the man. No, God have mercy on Yuval-noah-harrari. Pray for him. Open his eyes. Bring him to saving knowledge of Jesus. There was no prayer. It was just really weird. This guy's a bad dude. This guy is demon possessed. She also threw in his sexual preference there as well. He's all of these things. And there was not one time like, let's take some time to pray. If this man is the most influential, most dangerous man, and you're associating him with all these end time things, are you saying we just don't even bother to pray for the man? I don't know. Let's see how they wrap this up.
Pastor Mark Henry, Pastor Brandon Holthouse, and yours truly back on April 21st for Understanding the Times event here in the Twin Cities. We have a DVD of that, plus it's on our website, olivetreeviews.org, and go to video. It's all available for you. But J.B. Hickson, you could hear there, they are talking about all of us, the participants, and Mr. Harari. This is the spirit of Antichrist. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely. In fact, I was just recently at a conference in Wisconsin where I played that same clip. And if you had a pictorial Bible and you went to 1 John 4:3 and it talked about the spirit of the Antichrist already at work among us, it would have a picture of Harari. I agree with everything your guests were saying. He is at the tip of the spear right now, along with Klaus Schwab. And like you said, Klaus and Harari are working hand in puppet together. The thing people need to understand, though, is it's not just about controlling our thoughts to keep us away from God. It's about ultimate, total planetary control. It's all about transhumanism. They want to turn us into programmable entities that they can turn on and off. Klaus Schwab just came out with a brand new book a couple months ago called The Great Narrative.
There you go. You can go listen to the rest, Understanding the Times. That's the latest episode. It dropped this weekend. You go listen to the rest. There's over 37 minutes left. go listen to it. But I wanted you to hear the first part so that you would have the context. Clearly, they believe Yuval-Noah-Harari is, well, the spirit of Antichrist, and that he's right there in this whole thing. Those are some amazing accusations. They believe he's demon-possessed, bad dude, God-hater, evil. They went in on this individual. Who is Yuval-Noah-Harari, and do you need to know about him? Do I need to know about him? How much do we need to pay attention? We need to find out what we can and at least be able to give a more balanced and accurate presentation. Maybe Understanding the Times will do an entire program dedicated to Yuval-Noah-Harari where they will give greater evidence for their accusations, because they make some serious ones there. But I wanted you to be aware of this because this is what's going on in the world of Christianity. Remember, I call one of the series we do is an Eye on Christianity. This episode will go in that series, an Eye on Christianity, where I pay attention to what's going on in the Christian world. Well, what's going on in the Christian world is Understanding the Times, this podcast episode that we were just listening to. It's a radio program. It broadcasts on hundreds of Christian radio stations around the world all weekend. I think it starts airing maybe on Friday. It airs on Saturday. It airs right here in Abilene, Texas on Sunday. Someone just said we're all going to be robots. Well, that seems to be what they are implying. Again, I try to be careful here. I just think we have to find out more about Yuval-Noah-Harari and see what we can figure out and see what's real and what's not real. And maybe Understanding the Times will dedicate an entire program to it so that they can unpack it. I just don't like jumping to such conclusions about a person based off segments of different video clips without any context and without knowing. But some of the things said in those video clips, I will tell you, is you're like, whoa, that's pretty concerning, right? So I guess the main thing is, what does Yuval-Noah-Harari mean about under the skin surveillance? What does that mean? What is he referencing there? Does that sound more sinister than it is, right? What does he mean by that? What does he mean by the idea that making us hackable? Is he really claiming, as we heard on the clip, what they are saying that Yuval-Noah-Harari means? Is he actually saying that he wants to hack us so that we cannot believe fake news? Like someone determines that's fake news, and then they can just eradicate that thought from your brain so that you can't even believe it. And then they could come along and say, Jesus raising from the dead is fake news. We're going to keep you from believing that. Is that what he's... Now, again, just because let's say he does think that way, it doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. So we got to still keep it within some kind of perspective. But if there's someone out there who's supposedly greatly influential, at least promoting that idea, it's something at least to be aware of and to pay it. Understanding the times is an important thing. All right. So we want to keep track of that as well. We want to just know, what does Yuval-Noah-Harari think, and what is factual about him and what is misrepresentation, hyperbole, exaggeration. All right. So I wanted to bring this to your attention. It took 58 minutes to get here. I wish it wouldn't have taken so long, but I just felt it would have been wrong to not give you the context, right? I just felt like if I could have just started this with those clips that were playing, like, hey, Understanding the Times on their latest episode, they mentioned Yuval-Noah-Harari. Okay, help me out. But I wanted you to hear exactly how it was being presented so you know that within certain elements of Christianity, they're clearly connecting Yuval-Noah-Harari with the spirit of Antichrist and with end-time biblical prophecy. That is at least happening. I bet you it's happening far more than we know. Look, if they've done this at one conference, I bet you it's happening in a number of end-time biblical prophecy conferences. And now that it aired on Understanding the Times, it's probably going to show up in a lot more end-time biblical conferences. So we'll have to keep our ear out for Yuval-Noah-Harari. If you have the ability, I think there's a couple of web browsers I think will allow you to type in like words that you want to monitor, and whenever things pop up on the internet about them, if you can monitor Yuval-Noah-Harari, then Okay. No, okay, yeah. No, I understand. The person said they were being in the comments section or in the chat section here, saying, "Hey, I was being playful. I was being sarcastic. Forget no one knows my personality." It's not that no one knows your personality. It's just all I can do is read words on a screen and then try to interpret them. So, but thank you. So that they were being sarcastic. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be robots or not be robots. That clearly, that's the implication they're making. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. You can draw your own conclusions. But yeah, if there's any way to monitor the latest news, if you're on social media, just any mentions of Yuval-noah-harrari, what do you see? What are you seeing out there? I want you to keep your ears to the ground. What are you hearing? What's being talked about? Is his name showing up in small groups or friends, Christian friends who are into biblical prophecy? Who's talking about this individual? And we're going to try to do something to clarify and try to figure out what the truth is. So any help you want to help me in researching this, let me know. And you can email me what you find to newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, or those in the Discord channel. You know what to do. Just post it in the general channel. And we'll take a look at what you find and see. We've got some good researchers there, so we'll see what they discover. And we'll talk about this again soon. But I took an hour. So I got other things to do this afternoon. So we'll be back live on the air here shortly to do some more work today. But I wanted to at least get this out of the way since I heard this at about 1 a.m. I wanted to share it with you and put it out there, and we'll just see what happens. All right, thanks for listening. We'll be back on the air here shortly. God bless.